Everything you need to know to travel with someone else. On a recent travel tips video I did all about how to travel solo, one of you fellow explorers commented, "Chris, traveling solo is easy. What's hard is traveling with someone else. You should make a video about how to do that." So here we go. And the first thing you need to know before we get into all of it is why I'm doing this is because who you travel with can really change the dynamics of your trip and frankly whether it's good or bad. And so we're going to talk about how to choose someone to travel with, what to do when you're traveling, how to plan trips with other people. And you know, it turns out that your best friend may not actually be your best travel buddy. I've heard of so many great friendships that have been ruined because people went on a trip together. And the dynamics of the trip also really depend on, you know, are you taking a friend? Are you taking a family member? Are you traveling with a significant other? Are you traveling with groups of other people? Are you traveling with other families? And so I'll talk through all these different cases as we go through this. The area I won't hit really here is if you're traveling with kids, because I have a whole video about tips for traveling with kids that you can check out after you watch this one. All right, so the first area that I want to launch into, the first thing that you really need to consider when you're traveling with someone else is who in particular, who are you inviting? You know, if you're going on a trip, like you've decided you want to go someplace and you're gonna invite somebody, be careful about who you invite. Do you invite the black samurai or do you invite the red samurai? But you know, the way to help you decide who you invite on your trip is, how do you spend your ideal day? That's the first thing you should think of. And what do you personally like about travel? And then is the person you're going to pick compatible with that? For example, you might like to stay in hostels, but your best friend might like to stay in hotels. You might like to go out to nightclubs, but your friend might like to stay in. You might be a morning person and your friend might be a night owl. You might like cities and your friend might like the country. You might like taking it slow, but your friend might like doing everything fast in order to see everything. Do you like to be on island time while your friend is always 10 minutes early? Are you a vegan and your friend is a carnivore? And replace friend with whatever compatriot you're considering travel with. You want to make sure you have similar things in common, because if you have the relationship that I just described here, chances are you're not going to have a fantastic trip together. Ice Cold Beverage on the live stream says, "I stopped traveling with samurai, TSA issues." Ice Cold Beverage, that is a great point. Maybe don't pick a samurai at all. And Seth says, for sure, don't invite the evil samurai. That, I think, is always a good trip, too. Okay, the second thing to help you set up a good trip with any person that you're traveling with, whether it's friends, family, coworkers, is to set expectations with everyone else about what the trip is. So this includes where you're going, what kind of trip it's going to be. Is it going to be a relaxing beach trip? Is it going to be a 5-day hiking trip? What are the kinds of things you're going to do there? How are you going to go about doing it? How are you going to get there? Are you going to fly? Are you going to drive? Are you going to bike? Are you going to be backpacking? Those are all things that when you say to somebody like, "Hey, we're going to go to Paris." "Oh, but I meant we're gonna take the train there from Uzbekistan." You know, they're like, it wasn't exactly what I signed up for. So you want to make sure that you're upfront about what the trip is. On the same token, if you're invited on a trip by other people, before you say yes, you should ask all these details. So what about this? What about this? What about this? And how are we getting there? And how many days is it going to be? How long is it going to be? What are we going to do? Do you like to do this? Do you like to go to museums? Do you like to go to restaurants? And really make sure everybody's clear about the trip they're signing up for. Because if they expect they're going on one trip and you expect you're going on another trip, somehow those are going to clash, and that is not resolved best when you're already in some stressful situation, stuck in an airport when travel has gone wrong. Laurel says, I missed the entire first band festival and other things because others were not ready to go, and I asked them, please be ready to go, right? That's another one about, you're a timely person. Maybe they aren't. And if you know if you're traveling with people who aren't timely, maybe you need to advance the departure time for those people, right? Build in a buffer, because something when you're traveling with more people is things always take longer than if you're by yourself, because there's more people to coordinate with, more people to be late, more people to wait for. Boston Elevators and Aviation says, I'm not a fan of traveling with school groups. I'm someone that hates going around with the group. Yeah, definitely. We'll talk more about group travel as we go. Because the challenge with group travel is it's like mob mentality a little bit too. Like, you don't really get to do your thing. You just have to do whatever was decided generally by like the travel company, not even the people that are on the tour. So I'm generally not a fan of like gigantic group tour too. The third thing that you'll want to do to have a great trip with someone else is you'll want to establish trip responsibilities. So whoever you're going with, go ahead and decide at the beginning who's going to be doing research about where you should go, who's going to be booking hotels, who's going to be booking the flights, who's going to be driving, or are you booking your own flights and your friend or coworker or family member, they're booking their flights? And right, that's like, because otherwise you might find out you got there and nobody booked the train or nobody booked the hotel, and that's not something that you want. It's also generally worthwhile to, if you have a bunch of people, more than two, to just go ahead and establish a lead for the trip. Like, who is actually in charge for this trip? That's the one thing that's maybe good about going on like an official group tour, like the school group tour that Boston Elevators talked about. Like, there's a tour company that's in charge, and so they're like deciding things for the group. But if you're with a bunch of family members, you know, who's in charge on that trip? And so if nobody's in charge, you should go ahead and say, hey, you know what, I'll take the lead on planning, booking the tickets, making the reservations, so that there's at least one person looking and making sure everything actually makes sense all together. Now, if you're going with two people, you might, or you're going with another couple, you might be jointly planning it. And if you're jointly planning it, then you might want to decide things like, okay, I will plan the flights and the hotels, and it's your job to plan where we're going to eat and where we're going to go. Actually, OC Girl and I generally divide our responsibilities when we go on trips. I am the one who books the stuff. So I book the flights, book the hotels, which means researching the flights, researching the hotels. She gets approval on them, but I'm the one who's generally proposing, how about we take this flight? How about we stay in hotels? These are the options, and she gets to pick between the options, or she gets veto power. And then OC Girl, she gets to pick first the things we do on a given day in a place, and the places that we're going to eat, or what the list of those things are, and then I get to choose from those options or get veto power on those. What we also really like to do when we're putting a plan together is each list some of the things that we consider must-dos. But, we have to be kind of sparing on those, where if we're spending 2 or 3 days in a city, we each get maybe 2 or 3 must-do things, then we get some other like-to-dos, and so we make sure we do the must-dos from everybody on the list, and then we work our way down the things that are just like kind of like-to-dos after we go through that. But the reason why you want to do this up front and say who's in charge of what before you go is because traveling by committee is tough. If nobody's in charge, then when it comes to like, where are we going for dinner, you end up aimlessly walking around looking for dinner. I was on a trip in Rome, of all places, with a group, and one person said they knew a great restaurant, and we're all like, okay, great, take us there. And he's like, okay, as we wander the streets of Rome, and for the life of this guy, he can't find this restaurant. This was pre-GPS, and so we're just kind of like wandering out in the middle of Rome. For about 30 minutes we walked around trying to find this restaurant before a number of us got really hangry, which is the combination of hungry and angry. Hangry, hangry is the worst state to be in. And that's when some other parts of the group use our veto power and be like, hey man, if you don't find it in the next 5 minutes, we're just going to eat at this restaurant here. Which then the whole group was like, hey, you know what, why don't we just eat at that restaurant right now? Because we're all tired of walking around and we're hungry. But if nobody took charge at all, we might have still been walking around for 30 more minutes trying to find that restaurant that didn't actually exist. Point Traveler says, I hope the Rome guy isn't watching. Even if he is, he knew he sent us down a wild goose chase. It's okay. All right, the fourth thing you'll want to do is define who's actually paying for the trip. Are you paying for the trip? Is your friend paying for the trip? Is your mom paying for the trip? Who's paying for the trip? Are you splitting the costs? Are you splitting the costs by booking different things, like you booked the flights and your friend booked the hotels, and it all works out in the end? Or is one person going to pay for it all and then get reimbursed later by other people? Like, I think that's a great way. If you do have a number of people that are going on group travel and staying in similar accommodations and those sorts of things, I think a great way to do it is just have one person pay for all of the expenses, put everything in a Google spreadsheet, and then divide the costs evenly amongst people. But what's important is if you invited a friend and they think you invited them, they might think that means they're going for free. Or same token, if you got invited on a trip to Bangkok, does that mean you're going for free? Or does that mean you have to pay? And you don't want to find out afterwards that your friend is expecting you to pay a big bill when you weren't expecting it. And so, if you're splitting costs, then it's important to set like some budget expectation. For this trip, we expect to spend about this much for hotels, about this much to eat, about this much per day, because two people can have wildly different perspectives about what's a good meal someplace. Is a good meal in Rome $30 for dinner, or is a good meal in Rome $300 for dinner? Because in Rome, you can get both of those meals, and if you were only expecting to pay $30, but your friend drags you to the $300 a person meal, that's not going to be good. Bria says, one way to defend from being hangry is taking Snickers bars in a backpack. That's a great point. And so it's also worthwhile if you're going on a trip with other people to try to also be like, if you get hungry or you get thirsty, try to bring things that make you a good traveler. For me, I am someone who is always thirsty. If you watch my live streams often, I drink copious amounts of liquid. And so in order to avoid stopping every 5 minutes to find something to drink, I make sure I got a couple bottles of water in the morning, so I'm good to go. When I find convenient places to get drinks, I stock up on my drinks so that I'm not the one going like, I'm dying of thirst. I need to get something to drink. By the way, what am I drinking today? Today I am drinking a Nitro Pepsi draft cola that is nitrogen-infused cola. It has smaller bubbles and a smoother taste. It's actually a pretty good tasting Pepsi, although this can was $2.99. But boy, let me tell you, I always open the drinks before I stream live so that I don't have to be like fiddling around with opening it on like in front of all y'all. And this one made like an amazing like psh, I think that's that whole nitrogen infusation of it. But pretty good if you're looking for an interesting new cola. Also related to budgets, a great way to kind of like solve this problem is to stay in all-inclusive hotels or all-inclusive cruises, because then your travel companion generally knows most of what the cost is going to be up front, right? If you go on a Disney cruise, the only thing left to pay is excursions, and that's not all that much extra beyond the big price of the cruise that you have spent up front. The Wu-Tang Life says, make sure your friends don't bring the green stuff you smoke on a cruise. Yeah, you want to make sure you're not inadvertently a drug mule if you don't want to be. And I'm also hearing that you don't want to bring Snickers if it's a hot day because they melt. It can. And Wu-Tai says he was disappointed with food in Rome. I think you have to know where to look. And it's kind of like weird that I haven't done any Rome videos, but I've been to Rome like quite a number of times, and Rome disappointed me the first few times for food too, until I actually figured out like where the good places are to look. And generally they're not the places on the tourist enclaves, but they're the places in like the basement of these old buildings or things like that. Not the ones that are like the immediate tourist draws tend to have some of the best food, I think. Diana says, when we're talking about paying, we're usually fighting to pay the bill because everyone wants the credit card points too. And that's another great one about, you know, why you divide that up front. When it comes to restaurants, like when I go to with my friends to restaurants, yeah, we're generally not doing the one person pay at the restaurant and then everybody else just pay them cash. We're generally like, okay, there's 4 of us that have cards, and ask the restaurant to, you know, split it 4 ways, something like that. Or ask for separate checks for people as another way that everybody just gets to pay their own bill. Because if everybody can pay their own way, I mean, that's the best. Then you don't have to decide later. Julianne gives a great point and says, instead of traveling together, I enjoy meeting up with people along the way for a couple of days for a specific event. The rest of the time, I do my own thing. Perfect balance. Let's go ahead and talk about that now. So this is tip number 5. And tip number 5 is that you don't always have to travel together or stay together. And so for Julianne's perspective, she says we don't travel together, meaning we don't go on the same plane or in the same car. We separately get to the destination, and then when we're there, we hang out for a couple of days, and then a couple of days we don't. OC Girl and I did that with a mutual friend of ours where we separately went to Bangkok, and then a couple of different days in Bangkok got together for some activities. We did some like cooking classes together with a friend of ours. We did a day trip to Ayutthaya with a friend of ours. We traveled there in, again, different modes of transportation, different planes, different flights, and we stayed in different hotels, but yet we had some great daytime activities together in the destination. And, you know, sometimes they say distance makes the heart grow fonder, which is to say that you don't have to be around that travel companion all the time. By the way, what's this picture? This was a picture of some people walking a goat on the beach in San Diego when I was walking around Mission Beach, maybe a couple years ago, something like that. But it's rare to see people walking a goat on the beach. And if you're traveling with your goat, does your goat need to be with you all the time? Or maybe you can spend some alone time from your goat. I don't know. You know, and so this works well if one of you wants to stay at a hostel, but the other one wants to stay at a Park Hyatt. That is how you solve that. You just stay at different places, and then you meet up. It might work better if you stay in places that are like nearby each other, because it's easier to meet up. I also think you can definitely travel together and have some alone time. Some people have commented that OC Girl and I, when I share some of our travel vlogs, to be like, oh, like, you guys don't always hang out all the time together. Like, some days it's daddy-daughter day, and other days it's a mommy-daughter day. And so that gives us our little bit of alone time to go do something. And I think it's totally okay, whether it's an alone day, or it's just an alone morning, or it's an alone evening. You can totally create some alone time in the schedule. Brooklyn Joe suggests to not take your goat on vacation. All right, good to know, Brooklyn Joe, your perspective on the goats. Kathy says, my kids are getting to Tokyo a few days before us so they can do their own thing. That's another way to do it as well, right? Like, some people arrive early, or everybody arrives early, everybody does their own thing for a few days, and then everybody like joins up for the group hang. Lisa says this thing called Splitwise works pretty good for larger groups, which I think is like an app that you can use to like split checks or things like that. There's like a number of those, so I've not used that one, but thank you for the tip on it. Okay, so let's go on to tip number 6, which relates to hotel rooms. And Ty says, Don't share a hotel with friends who are swingers, unless you're into that kind of stuff. All right, thank you for that tip, Ty. But I'll say my tip with hotel rooms is to determine sleeping arrangements beforehand. What do I mean? What do I mean by sleeping arrangements? Well, you know, if you've got 2 beds and they're equal size, well, it's not that hard to figure out sleeping arrangements if you're 2 people. But if you're 3 people, somebody's got to double up. Or if there's a sofa bed, or if you're in an Airbnb that has multiple rooms, who gets the master bedroom? And so I think it is important to decide who's going to be sleeping where and how you're sleeping to figure out, like, is that what you signed up for? Or are you being told at the last minute, you know, you and your 2 other buddies, that there's 1 king bed for all 3 of you to sleep on? You're like, I don't know that that's what I signed up for. Really? Oh, we're at a campground. I didn't know that I was the one who was getting the sleeping bag. I didn't know I got the top bunk because I need to go to the restroom a lot. Can I have the bottom bunk? Or I don't want to get stepped on. I also think when it comes to hotels, you know, as we now have a 3-year-old daughter, we have a whole different, like, choosing experience when it comes to hotels. And now when we travel as a daughter with other parts of the family, booking hotels with, like, connecting rooms becomes more important for us. You might want a connecting room. You might not want a connecting room. Generally, if you're staying at Hilton's have, like, the options of, like, you can pre-book connecting rooms. A lot of times the hotels, you really do have to, like, call them if you want to make sure you get a connecting room. Generally, my experience has been that if I book rooms with the hotel and pick something like, instead of booking 1 room, pick 2 rooms, generally the hotel tries to put those 2 rooms together. So if you want to stay together near physically, one of the best ways to do that is when you book your hotel, don't book it under, like, 2 different names, like your name and your friend's name or the other family's name, but have one person book it and then book 2 rooms. The hotel generally tries to put those rooms together. But the same thing at check-in, you can ask and say, like, hey, we're traveling as a family, you know, can you put our rooms together, or can you at least try to put our rooms on the same floor? Now, if you're traveling with friends that you don't like all that much, or you aren't that close with, and the walls are kind of thin, you know, maybe you don't want them right next to you because you don't want to have them hear the wild party that you're having at night, or you're a loud snorer or something like that. You might be like, can you actually put me in different floors from that? And that's totally okay too. Dane says, how do you find hotel rooms for 3, as in a bigger bed for 2 and a bed not right next to that one? Difficult. Yeah, I mean, it does become harder to find hotel rooms for 3. I find the best hotel rooms for 3 are often, well, you know, you can decide, like, do you want a big bed for 2? And then do you want a sofa bed? Something like that. Like, I find that's often the best way to find ones that have extra beds, is we look for ones that have, like, sofa beds. So they'll have a bed and a sofa bed, or they'll have 2 queen beds or 2 single beds and a sofa bed. In Japan, there are actually tons of rooms that have 1, 2, 3, or even 4 beds. But they like literally you can get a room that'll have 3, you know, American twin size beds. In Japan, they call them single beds or something. Beds that are good for sleeping 1 person, and they put 3 of them, and they might not even be, like, right next to each other. They've literally got space in between them. And if you've spent much time traveling in Europe or the USA, you'd find the concept of a hotel room with 3 twin beds to be really weird. But it's not really weird in Japan. And then Kathy says, it's hard to find a hotel room for 4. My 2 adult kids will not sleep together, so we need at least 3 beds. That's another one where if you're in Japan, it's not hard. You tend to end up either in, like, looking for suites that might have a couple different bedrooms, or finding connecting rooms, right? Where you're like, well, I got the room for the adults, and I got the room for the kids, and I can open the connecting door, and there we go. Joe here says, in Japan, you can also sleep in a manga cafe. You sure could too. All right. And I see in the chat, Alex Jossie has just been a channel member for 4 months. So awesome, Alex. Thank you for supporting the channel. And it's cool to see that. I can't get that into the chat. I can only see that in, like, the live chat. I can't, like, stick it in here. Okay. So, in addition to defining the sleeping arrangements beforehand, my tip number 7 for you if you're traveling for someone else is to Define the itinerary before you go. Now, this is getting even deeper. Earlier I said define the expectations, like what kind of trip is it? What kind of places are you going to stay? So you do that and you get the other person to agree, or the other people to agree, or the other couples to agree, or the rest of your family to agree. And then you go deeper into what exactly you're going to do. And you either plan that together, or you plan it and you send it to them. Or they plan it and they send it to you. But so that there's some shared vision about, on day 1, we're going to do this, and on day 2, we're going to do this, and on day 3, we're going to be at these hotels, we're going to drive, we're going to go here, we're going to spend 3 hours in Tokyo, we're going to spend 3 days in Tokyo, because if you're going to Japan for 8 days, you could do a lot of different things, and if one person wants to spend all their time in manga cafes, that's going to be very different than if the other person wants to spend all of their time in Kyoto. So define that itinerary ahead. Is it going to be a really open itinerary, like you're just like day in Tokyo, or is it going to be an itinerary that's like really defined with like everything down to the 5 minutes? I've traveled with those people too. when we did our Fukushima travel series, we worked with the local Japanese production company, and they had our itinerary down to the 5 minutes. I mean, it was really impressive how scheduled out that agenda was. But when you're working with Japan train times, having it like penciled out to the 5 minutes, actually to the minute, is really important, because if the train leaves at 7:27, that's the time the train leaves, and you better be there. Might be another hour before we get the next train if you're out in the country. But on the notion of like working on this itinerary together, what I like to do is I like to use Google Docs within Google Drive to create a shared document, and then I share it with whoever I'm traveling with. If it's OC Girl and I, we have a shared Google Doc that we work on with the itinerary. And if I'm going with friends or if I'm going with other people, same thing, I'll create the Google Doc and I'll share it with them. I'll generally start off the base itinerary and I'll be like, hey, add some stuff in here. Like, or, hey, you fill out day 2 and 3, because there's the stuff you really want to do in Tokyo. I'll fill out days 4 or 5, and I'll fill out the flights and those sorts of things. Definitely don't wait until you get to the destination to like determine what you're going to do, particularly in this era of you need reservations for everything. And it's better like to make speculative reservations. So OC Girl and I will do this where like if we find a restaurant that we think is cool and it makes reservations, we'll just make that reservation and we'll put it in the Google Doc. Be like, dinner at this place, I've made a reservation. And the other person can always say, I don't want to eat at that place. But you're like, well, I've at least got a reservation. I could cancel it later if I need to. Cottage Full of Love says if you're traveling with older people, only have busy days every other day. It was perfect for Hawaii. That's a great tip as well. Not everybody can like go all the time. And so, yeah, you might be traveling with people that need to recover or recuperate. I also think as you're younger, you can maybe go to a new hotel every day. But I think as you get older, people want to stay in hotels for more days. And so then maybe like, well, don't plan to check out every day, plan to check out every other day. And R&D Bros says, particularly reservations are needed if you're going to Vegas where you want to book things out a month in advance. That's a great point. Alvaro says, what do I think about Roppongi in Tokyo? Roppongi's kind of like considered like party central in Tokyo. There's a Hyatt in Roppongi. I don't love the location of Roppongi because I feel like it's not super close to any of the other touristy stuff and it's not super well connected to the train. So Roppongi is not one of my favorite places to stay as far as hotels go. Cottage Full of Love says the best part of traveling is creating the fun itinerary. It's funny, I was recently reading a poll about creating travel itineraries related to like, do people like it or people don't like it? And so, yeah, there are some people who like love the part of like researching and creating. And then there's other people who are like, I hate it. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I just want somebody to do it for me. And so Kathy likes to plan. And she said earlier, it's great. Her husband just goes along with whatever she plans. And so that's a great relationship. If you've got one person who's the planner and the other person who's along for the ride, wherever we're going, I'll go with you. I think that's great. Seth says he's been subscribed to the channel since 2011. Seth, that's really impressive. That's like, how many years is that? Is that math in public? That's like 12 years. That's a long time. Seth, thanks for hanging on for 12 years. And then Rhodes says, As a kid on road trips with my dad, we never made lodging reservations, just stayed wherever we ended up. Hard to do that anymore. Hard to do that anymore. Yeah, I wouldn't do that today, right? That was like back in the day when hotels would advertise the price outside and you would show up. But now, like in the world of like dynamic hotel pricing and this and that, you don't want to be showing up at the front desk at the Bellagio asking how much it's going to cost today, because it's going to be more than you're going to want to pay. And so booking in advance, even if you book it on your mobile phone right outside the hotel and show up inside 1 minute later, is better than showing up at the front desk in general. Joe says, if you do have a tour someplace on the first day, book it ahead of time. Yeah, because the tour might be full wherever you're going. So if you got tourists, do that. I never will book like an activity on the first day, because with flights and things like that being canceled and delayed, like the luck of you not getting there on the first day, the chance of that could be pretty high. So we generally leave our first day like as open or lack of reservations or lack of paid things as we can, so that we don't end up into we paid for that, now we can't go. That's a bummer. Chicken Marsala asks if I use the restroom a lot since you drink a lot. That would probably make sense, huh? Which is why I need the aisle seat on planes, because I'm that one who's going to the restroom every couple hours. And Kathy agrees, I never book anything on the first day. Joe says, I like to sleep off the jet lag. And on the last day, souvenir shopping. That's a good tip too, because on the last day, you'll know how much room you have left in your luggage for any souvenirs that you're going to get. And Kathy's tip is to always book free cancellations so we can change if you need to. That's a great tip. You've probably heard me talk about this in other streams about like hotels and things like that. But it's also good, book your hotels with free cancellations or cancellations a couple days before, so that if you do need to like change things at the last minute, it's easy to. It's like another story about booking things, where like I book a lot of rental cars, and I really like Hertz and Avis because I don't have to see anybody. I get the rental cars pretty quick. I was traveling with somebody else, and I think they booked a rental car from like Dollar or Payless, and they're like, Chris, my car was cheaper. We can just use my car and you can cancel your car. I'm like, I'm not going to stand in line for an hour with you for your car. We don't have to split the cost of my rental car. I'm getting the rental car from Hertz. It'll save us an hour. Just come in and pile in the car that I got. I guess that was where we had like two planners and we each planned things. But again, as someone who's booked rental cars and hates standing in lines, I was not going to stand in the long line for the Dollar rental car. Chris says, if you're traveling with kids, be sure to take snack breaks and naps. Snacks are the life of traveling with kids. Ty says, I booked my hotels with a debit card that I never put my money in. Never had an issue with cancellation fees. And Point Traveler says, come and pile in my EV from Hertz. All right, Point Traveler, if you do have an EV from Hertz, I'll be curious to hear which one you got and how you liked the EV from Hertz. Okay, let's go to the next tip. Speaking of driving, let's talk about this. Oh, no, I had 2 more points back on number 7. Okay, so after you've created your plan, in addition, if you're gonna go separate ways or you're staying in separate hotel rooms or things like that, then like establish meeting times. Do you have to meet for breakfast, or can people eat breakfast on their own? So you might establish the meeting time of like, we're all gonna meet, or you and your friend are gonna meet, or whomever, we're gonna meet in the lobby for breakfast at 8. Or everybody eat breakfast on your own and we're gonna meet in the lobby at 9 to go. Or call me at 9 when you're ready to go, or knock on my door when you're ready to go. But like, I think establishing meeting times are super important, not just like, okay, well, whenever everybody gets up, let's go. You've only got limited time on travel, and so having that notion of the time when you're gonna start the day is important. And I think it's also important to establish general eating times. Like on Monday, we're gonna try and eat at noon and at 6 so that people know, are they gonna get hangry? Do they need to eat something before? Are you gonna eat early that day? Are you gonna eat late that day? So make sure people know roughly what time you're gonna try and eat. All right, the 8th tip to help you with better travel with other people relates to driving. Many trips end up being road trips where someone's driving or a few people are driving. But I think it's important, if you have a bunch of people in the car, to establish a rule that anytime anybody needs to stop for any reason, you stop for them. Whether that's to go to the bathroom, whether that's to get a drink, whether they need to puke because they aren't feeling well, you stop. And I know that there are some people who like marathon road trips to be like, we're all putting on our diapers and we're driving for the next 10 hours. That's another sure way. If you keep your friend locked up in the car, they're not going to like you anymore at the end of the trip. So if somebody wants to stop, go ahead and let them stop. If there's like, well, if we stop, it means we won't make it to this thing, then maybe you need to make that clear if you're the trip planner. Like, well, if we stop here, then that means we're not making this thing. And like, you can have that discussion on the fly about, taking a look at the large ball of twine on the side of the road means we won't be able to make it to that barbecue dinner. Okay, we won't eat the barbecue dinner. We're gonna check out the ball of twine, and then instead we're gonna eat at Chick-fil-A a little bit up the road. So Cal Seth says, I do love a good road trip. A good road trip, the classic American vacation. If you are taking a road trip, also establish who's going to drive, who has the driving responsibilities. Are you going to switch off driving with other people? If you are going to do that, then you need to make sure when you're at the rental car place, you tell them you have another authorized driver so that they add that person so that you're covered for any liability if that other person is driving too. I tend to be happy to be the driver in most places, although if I'm going someplace with somebody and they know the location better, then I'll go ahead and let them drive. But then as someone who's fairly tall, I'm like 6 feet tall, I generally end up in the front passenger seat because people have pity on me for how tall I am instead of sticking me in the back. And so the front passenger seat, your job in the car is navigator. Somebody's driving, and if they're not familiar with the place, then you, who are just sitting over there, your job is not to sit on your phone on Facebook all the time. Your job is to help look at the maps, help look at the exits, help look at things, and help the driver make their decisions about where they're gonna go. And I'll tell you, as somebody in the passenger seat, people always compliment me on like, Chris, you make a really good navigator. And it's like, yes, because I like to get where we're going instead of get lost. And I like to have a navigator too. So if you're in the back seat, then you can only be a navigator if you've brought your backseat driver's license with you. Bada boom boom. It's just really hard to see in the back. Like the front passenger seat, that's the navigator. There's also the rule of I call shotgun. Shotgun is that, you're like, it's like a bank car and you've got shotgun, you're the person right next to that. So people who call shotgun, they get the passenger seat too. Lisa says, what do you think of Turo? I've not used Turo yet. I want to because I want to make a video about Turo, but I don't want to make a video about Turo until I've used Turo. So I've heard a lot of people here, a lot of fellow explorers that have had good experiences with Turo. And in some airports, where was I recently? San Jose Airport. They actually have a section for parking in the airport for Turo-like services, like car sharing, I don't know, they call it something, but like literally now there's like an arrow for rental cars and then there's an arrow for these types of services too. Cod Full of Love gives a thumbs up for Turo. Laurel says the drive from Southern California to Zion National Park is beautiful in Utah. I agree, it is. It's a great drive. And Kathy says if you're enjoying the video and you haven't given a thumbs up yet, please do so. I would appreciate it. It helps a lot with the algorithm. Tells YouTube that you like the video so that they can share it with other people. So if you've not given the video a thumbs up yet, please do so. Whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching the archive, it helps as well. And Kathy said they used her in Hawaii and was a good experience too. And Seth says there was a conversation where Brandon says, I control the radio. And then Seth says the driver gets the full veto power on music. Yeah, I like what type of tunes you're listening to, that can be an important part of a road trip as well. Are you going to listen to your death metal or are you going to listen to your classical jazz or your show tunes? Those create two Very different experiences. And Sir Nate says, I'm watching this as I'm driving to Phoenix for work, 480 miles every day, 6 days a week. It's kind of like a road trip every day. Wow, Sir Nate, that is a really impressive drive you do every day. Stay safe while you're driving, and thanks for tuning in on your drive. Points Traveler says, windows up or windows down? Ooh, this is an interesting one. So for me, if I'm inside of a city, like I'm in downtown Los Angeles or downtown Rome, but like in the city center of Rome or something like that, and I'm not going very fast, like I'm going between 0 and 30. It's a place I'm not 30 miles per hour. I'm not really familiar with it. I like the window open at least a little bit because I like hearing the ambient sounds outside of the other cars or the horns or the motorcycles going by, like helps me as a driver. You know, if you're in a place like Hawaii where the weather can be fairly decent, you know, maybe windows down all the way. But that's something, you know, to make sure you're not like blowing away the people in the back because it's too windy. So thinking about what's that happy medium between window up and window down. Codge Full of Love says windows down, but the backseaters always complaining. Those backseaters. And Joe says windows open unless somebody farts. And then if somebody farts, you close the windows? Is that how you do it? Because you like to smell the farts, Joe? This stream has really gone downhill quickly. Julianne, her tip is no driving, less liability, less hassle. And I love the mental challenge of figuring out how to get around on public transportation. Interacting with locals is a plus. Julianne, I guess it like depends where you're going. Whether like public transportation is even a viable option. Dane says, train trips, just another level so scenic, no driving or managing anything, and can handle near unlimited friends. Cafe cars are so nice, especially on the coast. That's a great tip. Yeah, there's a lot of trains are great ways to just kind of like have a movable party on the train. No stress. The Pacific Surfliner, which is the one that goes from like San Diego to Los Angeles and then up the coast, also has some seats that you can seat like 4 people and have like a table in the middle. So those are cool too. And Alex says, at least it's not a Vegas stream where the real filth comes out. That's true. The Vegas streams always go downhill much, much quicker. Okay, tip number 9 is what do you need to pack if you're traveling with other people? You need to pack a healthy dose of patience. That's the number one thing you need to pack because everything is going to take longer. And just expect it to take longer, which means you're going to do less. The more people you travel with, the larger the group, the longer everything's going to take. The longer it's going to take you to collect people in the lobby, the longer it's going to take people to get in the car, the more things people are going to forget they're going to have to go back for, the more people that are going to have to go use the restroom at different times. And so plan for less things to do the more people that you have. But also know that if you are on a group trip, it means you don't get to get your way all the time. It is just as much their trip as it is your trip. And so give in to them every once in a while. And if you have a quiet friend that you're going with, maybe you need to ask them every once in a while to be like, hey, I'm thinking of going eating here. Is that cool with you? How you doing? Do you need anything? Does that sound good to you? Right? Making sure that you're not just like kind of rolling them over because they're quiet, but making sure they have an opportunity to speak up about things they want. And then number 10 is don't complain to the trip planner during the trip. If you weren't the one who planned it, but somebody else planned it, or somebody else planned a thing, don't complain about that thing. You know, if you gave up picking the rental car and somebody else picked up the rental car and they decided to use Turo and they got this car right here, don't complain. They did their best. They probably didn't want the car with the flat tire, but that's what they ended up with. Be a gracious another person traveling. You know, it's just like if you go to your grandma's house or your friend's grandma's house or your friend's parents' house for a meal and they ask you how it is, you say, thank you very much. I'm really enjoying this meal. Even if it's too salty or not salty enough, be appreciative of the fact that you're on the trip, that you're with your friends, and then you can complain about it more later as you both laugh at how bad it was or how bad the situation was, but you want to make sure that your complaining doesn't come off as making the person feel bad for picking that thing, because if they pick this rental car, they probably don't feel good about it either. Nothing you can do right now, and so make sure you make the planners feel good. All right, well, fellow explorers, those are my tips for how to travel with other people. We're gonna do some Q&A. I would love to hear your tips that I missed. You've been sharing them as we're going, but if there's more that I've missed, please let me know and I'll put those up. And then we'll do the giveaway for a Yellow Production shirt, as I do every time. I will say this one involves math for this one, so that's all I'm gonna say right now. And if you're not good at math on the fly, you might want a calculator handy for my question.
Fellow explorers, it is now Q&A time. If you've got a question, I've got an answer.
R&D Bro says, I only complain if my dad picks a dollar rental car. I'm not saying you can't say I told you so, right? Like, if there was an I told you so, and we're doing this instead, you can certainly have a bit of the like, see, or you can do the like, okay, can we not do this next time? Yeah, let's not do this next time. Brandon says, don't irritate your family and friends. That's always a good perspective. Diana says, my tip is create a WhatsApp chat so it's easier to include both iPhone and Android users. All right, Diana, that's a good tip of some sort of group chat somehow. I like that tip. Alex has a question going to Disneyland, the Disneyland Hotel, or the Grand Californian. Grand Californian, if price is the same or close, because the Grand Californian has a special access into California Adventure. Codge Full of Love says, Chris, you have the best followers who join the live stream. You all are great, and I look forward to these every week. Awesome, Codge Full of Love, and I do too. And I love the conversation, I love the chat, and I love all y'all being here every week. It wouldn't be the same. And one of the reasons why I enjoy recording these live is I generally enjoy the interaction and the conversation and the community that we have here. So thank you very much. Zachary Smith says, may I have another? Yes, you may have another. And if you haven't liked the video yet, please do so. I don't mean to you, Zachary, but I mean everybody watching. Richard says, what are your top tips for Airbnb for 3 couples? We don't do Airbnbs, and so I don't have any great tips for you, Richard. We generally stay in hotels. We entirely stay in hotels. But if anybody else has Airbnb tips for 3 couples, go ahead and help out Richard, a fellow explorer. And Jenny Fide says, I just like. Thank you, Jenny Fide. I saw the number go up, so I appreciate your like. Narrow Road says, Chris, when your friend breaks down looking for a place to charge his electric car, do you complain now or later? Yeah, that's another I told you so. Lisa says, what cruise line do you recommend for first timers? We don't have a ton of experience on cruises. Our first big cruise we're taking is a Disney cruise. We've only heard amazing things about Disney cruises, so there you go, Disney cruise. That's my recommendation. Emily says, Chris, we've been appreciating your road trip videos. My husband and I have spent a month driving across America from California, North Carolina. You really hit some relatable points. Awesome, Emily. I hope it's helped you with your road trip. Martin says, have you ever paid the group bill and figured out later everyone Venmo you to save time? Did a couple of times in Vegas. Extra points. Absolutely. I if I can work that out as an agreement to be like, I'll just pay for everything and then y'all pay me back later. Done. Because then it means it's just easier to pay, it's easier to book, less hassle. So yes, we've absolutely done that before. R&D Brothers asked what hotel we stayed at in Los Cabos or Cabo San Lucas. We stayed at the Hilton Hotel that was like halfway between Los Cabos and Cabo San Lucas. It was damaged they had like a big storm there a few years ago, but I think they've reconstructed it. Alex asks, what Disney ship will I be on? I don't know, there's only 2 that come out of San Diego, and they're like they're the smallest ones. They're the original ones. They're like the original 2, and I think they're both pretty much exactly the same. Points Traveler says, have you ever been to Hakone, Japan? Absolutely. Hakone is near Mount Fuji. It's one of our favorite places in Japan. You will find a Yellow Productions video on Hakone if you search for Yellow Productions Hakone. Raj says, tips to avoid arguing with my sister. Here's my tip for arguing in general. Like if you're arguing with somebody, like if they say something that you disagree with and you start an argument, think is it worth the argument? Am I actually going to convince them? Am I change my mind? Raj, if you never change their mind, just don't even lean into the argument. I find arguing has a tendency, like if you start arguing, it makes you angrier. And so just think, if like sometimes we think like, oh, this person's making me angry, but it's you. Like you can control your emotions and you can choose to respond how you want to. If you think of your like anger or something like that as like a fuse, try to like think of yourself as a bomb with a long fuse, and just be like, if they're really pumping you up, be like, long fuse, it's okay. Point Scholar says, how bad is the jet lag in Japan on the day after you arrive? I think it depends what time you arrive in Japan. If you're coming from the USA, I don't like to do the flights that arrive in Japan super early. Like you can leave the US in the afternoon and get in Japan like morning time. I like to get in Japan maybe like in the afternoon, something like that, like 3-4 p.m. if I can, because then I don't have all that much time left that I have to be awake in the day, so I can go to sleep. So that'd be my recommendation for you. Dane says, when are you coming to San Diego next? I recommend covering Liberty Station, East Village, Old Town, UCSD, Transit System, more. I come down to San Diego all the time, Dane. I don't make videos when I come down to San Diego all the time, but it is not far from our home up in Orange County, so I will add some of those to my list of areas to cover. Thank you very much. Joe says, what hotel we stayed in Zurich? We stayed in the Marriott in Zurich. You'll find a review of it. Search for Yellow Productions Marriott Zurich review. R&D Bro says, would you ever take a Royal Caribbean cruise? Sure. I don't see why I wouldn't. Ty asks if we've ever traveled with our bunny, MacGyver. I've been having a lot of issues lately finding pet-friendly hotels that allow pets other than dogs. Apparently pet-friendly doesn't equal bird-friendly. Yeah, Ty, no. We've not stayed at a hotel with our bunny. Same issue. Most hotels advertise they're dog-friendly, but nothing else. There's a rabbit boarding house facility that MacGyver stays at when we travel. We call it the Bunny Hotel. TP says, for your trip to Singapore, how much was breakfast at the Marriott Exec Lounge if you had to pay? I know you use points. I didn't have to pay because I'm a Marriott Titanium member, so there was then no cost to eat in the lounge. R&D Bros says tips to avoid timeshare presentations. Laurel says no eye contact. Yeah, I mean, like the timeshare presentations like in Vegas or these things come with like you're walking around and random people want to talk to you. And so my thing is like never talk to random people. The other one is if like you're on travel and somebody asks you like, how long are you in town for? That's often a question they lead with. How long are you in town for? The answer is always, oh, I'm leaving in about an hour. Oh, okay then. Have a good trip, because their timeshare presentation takes more than the hour. Related to fuses, Jenny Fide says, you're the king of the long fuse. Thank you, Jenny Fide. I appreciate it. And Brooklyn Joe says, I'm not angry. I'm from Brooklyn. Mike says, speaking of Japan, do you have a favorite hotel in Osaka? I'm torn between a few, and I would love a suggestion. Mike, I've enjoyed the Marriott in Osaka. If you search for Yellow Productions Marriott Osaka, you'll see the one I stayed in, that I enjoyed my stay in that one. Joe says, can you do a walking tour of the U.S.-Mexico border? That's a tough one, just with like border patrol and things like that. So I think that one is touchy. Dane asks if I have a Discord. I'm here with plenty of time to assist in anything. Thanks, Dane. I do not have a Discord. Keep that in mind. Julianne says, group members can also make your trip more efficient. Maybe someone shares their first aid kit, knows how to track down lost luggage, can solve a problem in the local language. I think that's a great point, Julianne. You just have to make sure you then use the power of group travel. And Julianne says, Americans have never been liked. Go abroad, be a good human, and change minds. I don't know that that's the case, Julianne. Like, I think Americans can be liked in certain countries. It's not all Americans that are disliked. I'll tell you, when OC Girl and I went to South Korea as the American YouTuber, like, boy, the elementary school kids, I've never been mobbed quite the same way I was in South Korea. So, not everybody's view of the U.S. is the same as the view that the French have of the U.S. I love my French viewers too. That's not a dig. That's not a dig on my French viewers. R&D Bro says, what's your favorite all-inclusive resort? We don't stay at a lot of all-inclusive resorts, mostly because I have pretty high-level status with Marriott, Hilton, and Hyatt, and so then we get pretty good executive lounge benefits or those sorts of things. And we also like to go out to eat, and the all-inclusive resorts don't work out for us all that well. Joe says, I've ever wondered why TSA is too strict and usually yelling compared to the gentle European security. I don't know, Joe. Couldn't really tell you. I'm gonna say it probably chalks up to training. I think that European security or security in Japan or Singapore or these places, they are taught and trained about how to be nice and cordial and those sorts of things. And I think that that's probably not a big part of our TSA officers training. I have not been through it, so I don't know. If there's any anonymous TSA folks that want to say their perspective, I would defer to them. R&D Bro says the USA have all-inclusive resort. It does, but not nearly as many as places like Mexico. And Grant says Denmark security was great. I believe it. Yeah, I feel like European security, for the most part, is just fairly reasonable about things. Doesn't seem stressful. My favorite, I get this all the time, where in the U.S., I will have a water bottle in my backpack, and they'll be yelling at me to be like, sir, you can't bring water through security. I'll be like, I know. And they're like, well, you have a bottle in your backpack. And I'm like, it's empty. Thank you. Right? But it's not the benefit of the doubt. They assume, oh, here comes that idiot guy with his Nitro Pepsi again. Oh. No, it's empty. Ty says, I like to leave a full water bottle in my backpack to make sure they're doing their job. Good one, Ty. I appreciate that. Brooklyn Joe says, I got pulled from the long immigration line on Bogota and directed to use a machine, done in 2 minutes. Yeah, good. I'll say, having traveled a ton in the U.S., I've gotten pulled out for I got the 4S boarding pass, the special security screening, something or other. This is where they give you the pat down, and I've had it a few times. And I've really found with the TSA agents, if you're nice to them, they're nice back. Where they're they pull me out for the special security and they'll be like, I'm sorry. And I'll be like, hey, it's all good. I know you're doing your job. Thanks so much. Thanks for keeping us safe, right? I'm like, oh. And all of a sudden it goes a lot smoother. And so, it's it is, what's the phrase? A little drop of honey goes further than, 10 spoons of salt? I know that's not the phrase, but, something like that. So even if people are cantankerous in the travel sector, to me, I generally try to be nice back to them because I don't know what happened in their day that put them in the mood they're in. And maybe what they need is a little bit of sunshine to get them out of their doldrums.
Yes, it's the time you've been waiting for. It's time for the giveaway.
All right, fellow explorers, it is time for the giveaway, where every live stream I give away a Yellow Productions crew shirt. And so if you were watching the live stream last week, somebody gave a suggestion about what I should ask as the question this week that I've decided to do, but I've decided not to do it in a way that makes it that people can toss the answer in the chat right away, like people are already doing, because I figured people would think about that. And so my question is, not just how many pandas are back here, but how many pandas are back here squared. Take the number of pandas back here and multiply it by the number of pandas back here, and that number is the number that I want to see. And if you're the first person to give me the number of pandas back here squared, then you will win a Yellow Productions crew shirt shipped to you anywhere in the world. And while we're waiting for those numbers, I'll take a few chats because that'll take you a little while with a calculator. Jenny Fide says, my hubby says, hi to Jenny Fide's hubby. Julianne says, yes, you will get more flies with honey than sugar. Indeed, you will. Mike L says 42 is always the answer. 42 is always the answer to some things, but it is not 42. Twin Acid says, I used to get the secondary screening treatment frequently. I got a redress number and haven't been pulled over since. That's great to hear, Twin Acid. Okay, so let's see. Has anybody put the right answer into chat? Very good. Panjo, congratulations. And many people think Panjo. Oh, I should have given Panjo the winner. Here we go.
And now we have a winner chicken dinner.
Sometimes we've joked that is Panjo a real person or an AI or guessing these things, but Panjo is the only one who had this correct number, 441, in the chat. There are 21 pandas behind me, and 21 times 21 is 441, so congratulations, Panjo. You know how to reach me. Let me know what shirt you want, and I'll get that headed over to you. All right, and fellow explorers, if you're wondering, hey, when is the next live stream going to be? Well, you can sign up for the Yellow Productions update. You'll find the link right here. I'll send you an email every time I've scheduled a live stream. And if you didn't get to win a shirt, but you want to buy one, you can pick it up from the Yellow Productions shop right here. If you want to support the channel, but you don't want to buy a shirt, consider becoming a channel member like these cool people right here. All right, well, fellow explorers, as usual, I've enjoyed hanging out with y'all. And as usual, I won't say goodbye because I'm going to see you in the next video.